I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I appreciate all the work that went into this and doing it on such short notice, and so thank you. I'm applying for this for the simple reason that I think I have a set of experiences, skills, a personality that would benefit someone trying to join a commission midstream. My wife Kathleen and I moved here in 1988. We raised our 3 children here. We started a small publishing business in 1990, had an office on East 9th Street across from New York Elementary. We were there till 2007 when we sold the business to Congressional Quarterly. I continued to do some publications and databases for them. I served 2 terms on the Lawrence School Board, twice as president. I was involved in 2 superintendent searches, and frankly, that search for the superintendent had a lot to do with what I thought maybe I had to offer for this position. I think the selection of a chief administrative officer is one of the most difficult and important things that a city or school elected board does. And it's important for Lawrence that we find somebody that is not only qualified, but appreciates the unique nature of Lawrence, because we can be an odd group, we can be difficult, we can be awesome, but you got to have an appreciation for the uniqueness of us. And I think that's what's important to find in both our city management and in our elected officials, is someone that appreciates the diversity that's out there, that's willing to listen and to respect their fellow board members, commissioners, and I really enjoy being a part of it. So thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to participate.
What is your plan for making traffic and pedestrian workflow more efficient in Lawrence, or how would you prioritize applying the Complete Streets initiative in comparison to other city projects? 60 seconds.
I've read about Complete Streets, and I like many parts of it, but what I've learned with 8 years on the school board is that you've got to be careful about catchphrases and become shortcuts without getting to the things that are really behind them. In many of those things, I'd like to have them incorporated, the additional bike paths, the pedestrian-friendly workways. But Lawrence is a very different city, the diversity that we talk about, and I think what you really need is good planning, and you need to have it so that you don't just fall back on, this is the plan, this is not the plan. You need to find out what works for certain parts of town and what doesn't work for other parts of town, and be flexible, and mainly just do good planning and not just get wedded to the latest catchphrase. And I want to avoid that, and I really want to get beyond that to how we can enhance biking, how we can enhance pedestrians and still make the community work. And most of us drive, and we obviously need to make cars operate easily, because infrastructure is one of the biggest things that we need to do with in our city. And so I would incorporate it in that scheme.
Question is, speak to the state of affordable housing in Lawrence.
Affordable housing is one of those issues, like everyone that's going to come before the City Commission. It's all context, it's all interrelated. It has to do with jobs, it has to do with taxes, it has to do with infrastructures. It has to do with whenever you make a decision about, saying you wanted to put in sprinkler systems in houses, what does that do with affordable housing? You've got to have it in context. You have to have it as part of your decision. You see decisions that were made, like with the apartment complex across from the stadium, why that was qualified for a Neighborhood Revitalization Act break of 85%. I'm not convinced that doesn't do anything for affordable housing. And it's those kinds of decisions that matter, the ripple effects of everything that you do, and you have to have a plan for it. You need to know what your affordable housing is in terms of your stock, but you have to have that in your mind as you make every one of these decisions, and not just have it off by itself. It all has to be in context.
House, where do you think growth in Lawrence should be directed in the future, address retail development such as the South Point project?
Well, I think to a large extent we do provide the broad direction through the 2020 plan and its successor that's being developed right now. I think you have the node systems that are in place. There's obvious places where it's going to grow in terms of 6, or it would make sense that it would grow at 6 and 10, as well as Iowa and 10 when the bypass goes through. You decide the areas that it's going to go, and to some extent the type that's going to go in there. And then as a business person, I think the market does a nice job of determining the specific businesses. But on the south side, it is pretty obvious that you're going to have some development, but it's going to be limited because of the Wakarusa floodplain, the valley. You've got a river right there. Now, eventually, we will probably jump over the river. I mean, more of the school district is beyond the south of the Wakarusa than is north of it. But for the development to happen, you need to have it. You may need to make sure, to the extent you do incentives with infrastructure, that you do it in those areas where you want development to go and where you have it planned, and you certainly don't provide incentives in excess of what you have set up for, and you stick with your node system that you've already created.
Is what qualities will you look for in our new city manager?
As I mentioned in my opening statement, this is, I think, the most important thing this commission will do. And having done it twice over the 8 years I was on the board with the superintendent searches, there's many levels of work that go into finding the right fit for your community. And one of the biggest ones is making sure that your commission is on the same page, not necessarily agreeing on all issues. But when you're going out trying to hire somebody, you're in for a world of hurt if you've got a lot of conflict and you haven't figured out your own act before you go out and ask somebody to join you. You need to find a lot of high qualities in whatever you're looking for, but you really need to find someone who is a good match for Lawrence, who gets Lawrence, who understands how we operate. And I'm not saying that this commission that exists now isn't getting along. I'm just saying that that's part of what you have to do is make sure you're on the same page. And I know they're partially along on the search already. But I'd like to be part of that because I know you can't just hire for the moment. You've got to hire for the whole time, and you've got to hire for the whole community. And any of us who have been involved here know that is a very diverse community with a lot of opinions and a lot of eagerness to express those. And so you've got to find that right fit.
Mm-hmm. How would you address current and future needs of the Lawrence Police Department?
I think the police have done a nice job of convincing, at least me, that the needs are real. I know what's frustrating for them is that they have, they go through all this work, they have all the effort, and the community that has supported them has said, these needs are real. But in Lawrence, it often takes a couple of times to get people to buy into it. And the bond issues I've been involved with the library that I helped, with the campaign there, and with Lawrence needs some convincing, and it can be frustrating, but the fact is they're the ones paying for it. And so we have to take the time, step back, and make sure that we have done our work so that we can show that it is about public safety, it is not about a building, because that ultimately is what police are about. It's about providing safety. And to focus on the building in a campaign, I know it's hard, but you've got to separate that and say, this is how we can provide safety better. And I know they think they did this, and I know they did do it as far as I was concerned. But with the community, you can't let your frustration that they didn't immediately accept what you wanted. You need to step back, work with Lawrence, and those of us who have been involved in these things know it takes some time to get where we want to go. But this time when we do it, we need to solve it for longer than what we've done in the past. We keep thinking we've done it with the police, and it proves to be inadequate for the future. It gets back to good planning. Let's do it right and make sure that we have the community bought into the whole thing. But it is about public safety.
Question is, the KU student body is disconnected from Lawrence politics. What is your plan for engaging the population of students working to get involved?
I mean, we can and should try to do that. I have a student up there, and trying to engage her in the conversation, I think, is going to be a challenge. I think we need to realize that they are an incredible asset to this community, that we are lucky, very, very lucky to have KU here in many ways. It is a huge part of our fabric. We can reach out to students. There are many ways you can do it, and you will get some involved. But I work with the Dole Institute, Dole Center on Politics up there, and there are some amazing students up there who are engaged, who are interested. It will be an ongoing, ever more battle that you will need to do, because those students are going to turn over. You're going to have a new bunch. Those of us who can remember what we were like in college, city government was not going to be high on our list, and I'm not sure what you can do about it. I'm not trying to make light of it. I'm just saying you got to reach out and be there for the ones who are interested, but not think that you're going to suddenly have 20,000 KU students engaged in our community. It's just the reality of the age and the nature of what they're doing.
Seconds. What constitutes a desirable, healthy neighborhood that you would want to live in?
Having lived in Lawrence for 27 years and lived in the same house for 27 years, and my neighborhood I wouldn't trade for anything. We have the same neighbors on many sides that we've had since we started, and they'll drive you nuts. I know I drive them nuts, but I love them. But it's different than other places, because every neighborhood is different, and that's what makes it healthy. And I think we need to respect those differences and not try to layer on what our perceived values or goals or whatever and judge them by the way the houses look or don't look. I had our office in East Lawrence on East 9th Street. I developed a great appreciation for what that community was like in that neighborhood. And I think we need to value the differences that we have and not try to homogenize them all with a plan and make everyone live like us. I love Lawrence because everyone doesn't live like me, and they don't ask that I live like them. And so a healthy neighborhood is one that I think from a city standpoint, we do need to make sure about sidewalks, we need to make sure about biking, and that we have those available, but we mainly need to respect the differences.
What do you propose to make sure Lawrence provides for itself a communication and information infrastructure for the 21st century, i.e. municipal-wide fiber optic broadband internet, Chattanooga muni-owned model, KC Google/corporate model, or what else?
Part of me is tempted to have you repeat the question just for amusement purposes, but I'd like to say I have answers for everything, but I don't want to mislead anyone. I do think that if you do it, we need to encourage it. We need to treat it as a utility. It is like phone service was, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. We need to make just basic cable access or internet access available to many, many different people. How you do that, I don't have the answer to it, but I do know you need to make it a preference and something that you want to provide incentives for and figure out a logical way to do it. It's easier to wire Baldwin than it is to wire Lawrence, and if we had Google come in, I'd be okay with it, but I don't hear them knocking right now, but we need to find a way to do it, treat it as a utility, and make sure that all have access to it. And I think we should also make sure we're partnering with KU on this, because they have obviously great incentive to make sure that they continue to have the kind of connections that they need for their work.
The question is, taking into account that the East Lawrence neighborhood did not ask for the East 9th project or participate in the development of the Art Place grant, do you feel that project's process has been fair?
I have a great deal of affection for that area of town, as I've mentioned before, with our office having been there. I stared at 9th Street for 15 years, day and night, because of the way you do a small business. I also did other stuff, but a lot of time I was staring at the street trying to figure out what to do. But I think with that project, it's typical of Lawrence, where the trust broke down at some point. And I think if that were my neighborhood, where my home was, I could see why it concerns you, because you don't want somebody coming in from the outside with this glamorous grant and saying, we're here to help you, we're going to make your neighborhood better. And I know a lot of people in the community in that neighborhood have bought into it, but a lot are still questioning what it's going to be, and is it's going to be, nightclubs or whatever, and that's not what the design is. But it's your home, and I get that is a special place, and you feel like you're kind of fighting the odds anyway, and then somebody's there to help you, and it's just frustrating. And that's where, like with the police, I know it's frustrating because they had many, many meetings. They retried things. Sometimes you got to step back and you got to do it again just to build the trust. And at some point, you do have to make a decision to move forward or not, but you do have to take a while in Lawrence to do it right, and that's what makes us special.
The question is, what is your top priority, that has not been mentioned so far? You have 60 seconds.
Any commission is going to be faced with a whole host of issues, ones we've discussed and ones that we haven't. I think ultimately, from my experience with being on an elected body, is the ability of a commission to work together, not necessarily to agree on everything, and many things won't. You'll have split votes, but that understanding, that importance of listening to your fellow commissioners, of respecting where they come from, of having an appreciation that they bring a diversity of opinion to the board, and even though you disagree on an issue, that you're willing to work together. And I think this commission is off to a good start, and I'd like to be a part of that going forward, because I think that ability to respect your fellow member, board member, commissioner, is so fundamental to all these other issues being dealt with in a constructive fashion. I've seen so many people come through, they get on with a specific issue, they're hard to go on that issue, and then suddenly they're confronted with the reality that there's a whole host of other things in a city that need to be dealt with. And you've got to have people who are on there who are willing to listen. I can't emphasize that enough. In all these issues, we have to listen to one another and then be willing to act together for the betterment of the community.
All right. A question for Scott Morgan. Police facility. Basically, you said that the needs are real, that the city needs convincing. My question to you is, have you toured the facilities?
How do you tour?
Have you
I
toured the
I've not
facilities?
toured all of them. I have toured a couple of them when they had open houses. Most of what I did was, I read their materials, and frankly, I think that's, in a way, I'm trying to get across to the supporters who get frustrated that we don't already have it, is that I went to a forum a week before the election so that I could hear the presentation and get the information beyond what I was reading. And I was a little frustrated with some of the adequacies of the answers. One of the questions I think somebody threw up really as a softball question was, what are the dollar amounts and the efficiencies that you will have by having these combined spaces? And the answer was, we haven't put pen to paper on that. We know there will be some. And I thought, you can't do that. You can't say, we haven't put pen to paper a week before the election on how much this is going to save you because your staff isn't driving across town. I've done enough bond issues. I've done enough things with how you do that. You got to have answers to those kind of questions. So that was my frustration. And I think those are answerable questions. Those are solvable problems, but you're going to have to work on that.